Wow, what a game!
Let's
Yes,
go.
sir.
I'm
Let's
so
go.
What a
hyped.
game!
Well, let's
People are gonna
go.
come in here and be like, "Why are these three goons so excited about a summer league game?" But like, if you watch the game, that like you would know why. I'm so hyped.
That was awesome. Well, the Boston Celtics defeat the Atlanta Hawks in their first game of the Las Vegas Summer League, 85-83. Peyton Pritchard led the way in scoring for the Boston Celtics. He put up an impressive 23 points, but not far behind him was Carson Edwards, who tacked along 17. There was a lot to talk about. I think first of all, we just got to, our overall takeaways from this game. It's been the first Celtics win in a long, long time, so it feels good to watch a winning Celtics squad get a win.
I know.
What do you guys think of
That was
this win?
The ending was just the ending to it. Like, notice how the Celtics did win that game as well. I know they did get hot late shooting threes. We'll get into that. But they won from their defense. They made stops. And isn't that kind of funny? Because that's been the Celtics' focus so far this offseason as we constructed this roster. And it's funny how it carried over here to the Summer League. Celtics made stops, and they were saying it on NBC Sports Boston. I think Chris Mannix said it best. These guys, 4 Celtic players who were on the court at the end of the game, 4 to the 5 of them played in the first round against the Brooklyn Nets. He said something along the lines of, these 4 players played in the playoffs last year. They should dominate the rest of the game. They did. They were down by, I believe, 5 with like 2 minutes left, and they ended up winning by 2. I'm hyped.
I know. That was absolutely nuts. I cannot believe it, and we have to give special props to Peyton Pritchard for carrying them in the fourth quarter when no one else wanted to hit a shot. And Romeo Langford, ice in his veins, hitting that clutch 3. That was a great game. I cannot believe they ended up winning that game. And they put on a real team performance right there.
I know that it's awesome, and it's funny because what did we talk about in the pregame show? We talked so much about it. We talked about Romeo Langford hitting shots. He did miss a few tonight. Trust me. Even Pritchard missed a few. The Celtics were not hot in the first half. If you guys watched the first half, Celtics didn't heat up till later on in the game. But predominantly, I'm so impressed with how the Celtics closed this game out this afternoon. From Langford hitting shots, Pritchard, Nesmith struggled all night shooting the basketball, but he was there was no displeasure in his defense. I'm so happy, and I'm sure we'll get to Yam. I mean, Yam just absolutely played out of his mind.
That was my key to the game.
That was Yam, and we won. That was
Yam was my key to the game, and I told you, I'm like, we got to see what Yam does. He was getting compared to Tony Parker and all of these legends, and he put on a show. He did really well today. I'm really impressed with him.
Even the Celtics second round draft pick made some shots tonight. Obviously, he hit the side of a backboard on one shot. We won't. Good thing we can't cut the highlight. Good thing we don't know how to cut the highlights yet, because
he made the steal. That led to the end of the game.
Which he said in a press conference where, he's more of a defensive focused guy who needs to improve his shot. I think his shot looked okay. I mean, he missed some, but he was getting great open looks, and he hit a few tonight. So I'm impressed with the Celtics. Obviously, it's Summer League. There's going to be stuff to improve on. But for the first Summer League game, especially in a clutch situation, I'm super impressed with what I saw from the Celtics this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, something that stood out to me was that this was totally a team effort. And, that's really big for the Celtics because we haven't seen a team effort Celtics win in forever.
So long.
Yeah, so, and, it is the Summer League, but it's, refreshing for Celtics fans for them, go out and get a win like this. It wasn't easy. We fought back down 5, probably with about 2:30 left. Pritchard hit a couple of big threes, and, that, down the stretch, that was huge for us. So, but, it wasn't just Pritchard. We have to, acknowledge the fact that Carson Edwards gave us 17, 8, and 6. So
yeah, all around was great.
So all around,
Carson was great.
A great team effort for sure.
We talked about that pregame too. Carson Edwards, something to prove. We heard again Chris Mannix, who I love on NBC Sports Boston's broadcast. Whenever Chris Mannix is on, and I didn't enjoy the broadcast today. It was kind of all over the place.
Yeah, that was not.
Chris Mannix is such a pleasure to hear. I learned a lot from him. What happens with Langford and Edwards this year if they don't have a good year? What happens to them? They could be gone. So I definitely think tonight those two prove something that, hey, maybe we can stick around. I mean, obviously we're going to have to see that the remainder 3 games that we have left in the summer league. But I think who was it? Carson Edwards really played out of his mind tonight, and 8 rebounds for what is he? 5'9", 5'11", something like that. 8 rebounds. That's awesome.
I was just going to talk about that. Like, I was shocked about how good Carson Edwards played tonight. Like, I mean, we knew that Carson Edwards had the potential of being a good player and having a good night. We know the Cleveland game where he hit like 6 threes and he just went off. But he was really good, and I was shocked. He looked good defensively too, which was something we didn't see very much of last season, where he was just not great overall.
Something I want to talk about was my key to the game was Aaron Nesmith, and Aaron Nesmith really, really struggled. But something I want to point out was, did he shoot well from 3? No, not at all. Actually, he shot I believe 1 for 8 from beyond the arc. But if you eliminate those threes, right? You're talking about 2s. He took, he shot 4 for 6 from 2. So, there's positives and negatives to this Aaron Nesmith game. He scored 11 points. He played some solid defense. So I think this kind of is like a repeat of almost what happened throughout the season. Was just if Nesmith's shot falls, this game he's probably, if his shot's falling, he's going for like 24, 25. So, that is something I do want to point out was Aaron Nesmith's game. And, it wasn't the best, but if you look into it, it wasn't awful.
Yeah. Look at how it didn't disturb him at all. He kept shoot. He kept shooting. He didn't let that bother him. He was shooting. And guess what? The good thing is about Aaron Nesmith, we talk about it every show, whether it's a podcast, pregame show, special, whatever it is. Aaron Nesmith is a 3-and-D guy. If he's not giving you offense, he's giving you defense. If he's not giving you defense, he's giving you offense. So you take what you can get with Nesmith. Although it was a horrid day, 1 of 8 from 3, you take what you can get. And overall, Celtics won. I'm happy.
Definitely. I 100% see a lot of Marcus Smart and Aaron Nesmith right now. You said, Marcus Smart, he can be insanely streaky when it comes to shooting, but I mean, Aaron Nesmith's energy that he provided today was unmatched. Like you said, Justin, he was struggling from 3 and he was still shooting and he was still playing really good defense. And I feel like that energy ended up being really contagious throughout the rest of the team today.
But honestly, I'm happy. I'd rather Aaron Nesmith, struggle, like in terms of like him playing a bad game. I'd rather him still be shooting. Because, like we said, Aaron Nesmith came into the draft as the best shooter in the draft. So, I think it's really important for him to not put his head down. If he's shooting 1 for 5 from 3, but he has an open look, he has to keep taking those looks. Because if he starts settling, that's when it starts to get dangerous.
Yeah, and, this is why we have Summer League. Aaron Nesmith didn't get Summer League last year. He got thrown right into the mix, as well as Peyton Pritchard, right? So it was very good to see both of them play in the Summer League, both of them come out of their first game healthy, as well as, like you said, Aaron Nesmith, when he was not shooting a 3, he was hitting shots. He was getting open. He shot 6 of 4 on 2-point shots. Peyton Pritchard obviously just went nuts, bananas. I don't know what he drank at halftime, but he just played out of his mind. So it's really relieving to see these guys out and running because they didn't get you got to remember, guys, they didn't get a Summer League last year. They didn't get a full training camp, and they got 2 preseason games, and they got thrown into a 70-game season where there's a play-in tournament. It's you take what you can get nowadays.
Yeah, I was impressed with how they played today. I was really happy with the way they played. They looked like a team.
Yeah, I feel like this was one of those games, right, where down the stretch you were watching and you were thinking like, oh, like I think like it was one of those games where might have been down by one, but you're like, oh, we're getting this win. And a big part of that was Romeo Langford. I think Romeo Langford had a great game. I would still like to see him in attack mode a little bit more. I think he settled a little too much for the perimeter shot. I believe he shot what 3 for 7 from beyond the
Yeah, he
arc.
did. He shot 7 threes.
Which he did hit 2 corner threes, which is big. I believe he shot 2 for 4 from the corner on the game. Which is 50%, which we'll take based off of last season. But I'd still like to see him. Yeah, I know it's progress. I'd still like to see him get to his spots because I think when he does attack the rim, when he does get to that little mid-range pull-up floater, he could be a real scorer, a real threat. So we know he's going to give us defense, and I think late in the game he showed us like, listen, I'm going to step up and I'm going to give some offense.
And Yam, that's all I can say right now.
Yam. I really hope Yam makes the roster. I really hope he makes the roster this year, or at least he can like settle it with like his team in Israel so that he can play with the Celtics. Because you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me a bit of Shane Larkin. Remember when Shane Larkin was on the Celtics and he just provided like instant energy off the bench? I have a feeling Yam could be something like that with the Celtics. Now, obviously, is he going to be that right away? No. And I know it's one summer league game, but still, I have a feeling he could provide like a spark off the bench if we had him on this team.
Well,
go ahead.
You go, Justin. Yeah, that's all you.
Oh, I was just going to shift it back to Langford. But one thing I do want to say about Yam was I think his first 2 defensive possessions were jump balls. One of them actually went to Nesmith, but he dove on it. If you saw my Instagram story, I was going nuts. It was in the second quarter. But that is what you want to see. You want to see that. And you know what? That's kind of how Nesmith's first professional minutes were. He dove on a few loose balls or got a few hustle rebounds, and all of a sudden we're hyped up about this guy. So hopefully Yam can produce the same and off the bench as well. I know, everyone's a bench player in Summer League, but off the bench too. He's not starting, so he's not playing as much minutes. That was really relieving to see Yam come in there and dominate.
For sure. And if you watch us, our post game shows, that every post game show we have a player spotlight. So that brings us to our first ever Summer League player spotlight. And some people might say Peyton Pritchard, some people might say Yam off the bench, but us at the Celtics Talk Weekly, we had to give it to Carson Edwards. Like we said, he kind of kept us in the game when everyone else was cold. He gave us 17 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 6 for 17 from the floor, which is not the best, struggled from 3. But, he kind of contributed in all ways on the court today. So Carson Edwards is the first ever Celtics Talk Weekly player spotlight of the Summer League.
We've seen this we've seen this type of performance from Carson Edwards in the regular season. Most notably, if you guys remember that game in LA when we played the Clippers, I think he started that game. Carson Edwards has the ability to have nights like this. It's just, is he going to stay consistent, and is he going to get consistent minutes? I think that's what he's going to have to prove here in the Summer League, that he does deserve the consistent minutes. Many of you, like Rob said, might think Peyton Pritchard should get the player spotlight, which rightfully so. I think we debated that in the fourth quarter. Rob and I were going back and forth. We were like, who the hell should we pick? But Carson Edwards ultimately from the tip just kept the Celtics in the game. If he wasn't scoring, he was rebounding. If he wasn't rebounding, he was passing. He also had a steal, so he was doing it on both ends of the floor. That's huge.
Definitely. Carson Edwards, he performed, man. And if we didn't have Carson Edwards out on the floor, I don't know if the Celtics win this game, honestly.
I agree.
Peyton Pritchard kept us in the game when it came to the second half. But when it came to the first half, he wasn't doing anything. Carson Edwards, although he wasn't amazing from 3 today, he kept us in the game. He was consistently scoring throughout the entire game. And I'm excited. I hope he gets a chance this season, whether that be whether that be just like 10 minutes a game, just like a little bit of time where he can show something, I hope he gets a chance.
Now something I want to point out with Carson Edwards is, I personally have always loved Carson Edwards. Even when he was on Purdue, his March Madness run was awesome. And if you actually go back on my old Celtics fan page I used to run, super inconsistent and whatnot.
They used
right?
to steal pictures from me.
Yeah, I used to steal Justin's pictures. But if you go back onto that account, you can see I actually screenshotted that draft pick, and I said biggest steal of the draft. Don't at me. I wouldn't call him the biggest steal of the draft by any means. But I have been a big Carson Edwards fan, and as much as he's shown flashes of him can really score the ball, I don't know if he has a real fit on this Celtics roster. And I say that because I do believe Pritchard is made for real NBA basketball. And what I mean by that is I think the flow of the offense, he fits better. I think he's a little bit more consistent. I think he's got a more polished game than Edwards. That doesn't mean Edwards can't find time in the rotation, but I want to see a little bit, and we saw it today. I want to see a little bit more out of Carson going forward of just attack mode of finding his offense in the flow of the game.
Yeah. Now let me ask you guys this. I want to ask you both. Do you guys think Carson Edwards is above a two-way contract player? Do you think he's above that? Do you think he's good enough? He's not good enough to be get big minutes in a contending rotation like the Celtics, or do you think he's also too good enough to be down in the G League?
So my thing is, I don't think he's good enough on a contending lineup, right? But I think if you were to put him on a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, which he loves torching, a team like, the Pistons, a team like, one of those lower tier teams, I think he could give them good minutes. I do. I think he could come off the bench. I think he could give them 8 points a game, 10 points a game. But I think on a team like the Celtics, on a team like the Nets, the Bucks, the Sixers, the Hawks, I don't think he can find time. I think because of his height, his style of play, I don't think he's going to be able to get real playoff contending minutes.
I definitely agree with you, Rob. I don't know if maybe it's just because his body of work isn't like extensive yet, or maybe I don't really know what it is, but I'm not 100% sure that Carson Edwards is really above a two-way player right now. And like you say, if he was on a team like, let's say he was on OKC or he was on like Cleveland or Detroit, he probably would do really well. Or at least he would have like some minutes where he would actually be able to play. But for the Celtics, I think he's just going to have to be a two-way player. I think that's just the way it is for him to be on this roster.
Yeah. And I think next season, I know NBC Sports Boston, they were talking about this was, next season we're going to have to make a decision with Carson Edwards and Grant Williams, those 2019 draftees. What are we going to do with them? Because they're kind of running out of time and they haven't really proven yet that they can actually be real rotation players. So, this is a big season coming up for both, not just Carson Edwards, but, we talked about Grant Williams in the pregame show. They're going to have to step up and they're going to have to show us something.
Well, like I said, this is why I think this year's Summer League is super important, right? Because don't forget, Romeo Langford is also a part of that. Yeah. I mentioned this in the pregame show. Tremont Waters is gone. He was one of those 4 players drafted. Yeah. So could we see a domino effect? Hopefully we don't, but could we see a domino effect? I think that's why we see guys like Edwards playing. I think that's why we see guys like Langford playing. And I think that's why we saw what's his name? I feel disrespectful for getting that. Grant Williams. I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't. But again, he should be here, right? He should be here. Now,
well, I have a question though for you.
Yeah.
Not only Justin, but you too, Ian. Do you think it's time to let these guys go? Because honestly, I think at this point you could argue that these guys are just taking up roster spots. And I think guys like Edwards, guys like Williams, I'm not sold on getting rid of Langford yet, but I think there's vets that we could bring onto this roster that would contribute much more than Edwards and Williams.
I think you have to give it this year. I feel like this year is the deciding year where you have to do that, because I'm not 100% sure you can really make that decision right now. Now, maybe Carson Edwards, because he hasn't been like a big part of the Celtics team so far. But I don't think they're going to move on from Grant Williams, only because I feel like he's shown them that he can be a legitimate player, like at least have minutes on a team like he did last year. So I don't think they'll end up moving on from Grant Williams. But when it comes to Romeo Langford and Carson Edwards, I feel like this year is the year where they have to really make that decision.
Yeah, well, I think the pressure is definitely on Langford more so than Edwards and Williams, because they can kind of let go of Edwards and Williams a little bit easier, I feel like, than Langford. Because Langford, like I said, high draft pick. He's a lottery pick, 14. He's got a high, they want to believe he has a high ceiling. I feel like with guys like Williams, guys like Edwards, they're like, we can let go of these guys and we're confident they're not going to give another team something, right? Where a guy like Langford, where, you might drop him, you might ship him, and next thing you know, he's thriving on a different, in a different organization.
Well, you've seen what you can get, and I'm not saying that Edwards and Grant have hit their ceilings yet, but you've seen what Grant and Carson can provide. That might be easier. That might be why it might be easier for you to say goodbye to them before Langford, because you really haven't seen what Langford has had yet. But at the same time, if he's going to be so injury prone, hence why we gave up Kemba Walker, maybe, but I think Langford definitely needs to show something this year, more than Edwards and Grant, because we've seen what those guys can do, but we really, really need to see what Langford does here this season, whether it be preseason, summer league, regular season, playoffs. We got to see a healthy Romeo Langford in the rotation. And I thought about this, guys, during the game. Emi and Brad aren't the same coaches. No. We could see different rotations. Yeah. We could see completely different rotations with a pretty similar team that we have now, right? Although I know we're minus Ogilvy, minus Fournier, and minus Kemba Walker, who are big roles in this on the roster in the minutes. But who knows? I mean, we could see Peyton Pritchard playing a lot more minutes. And Aaron Nesmith at the same time, whereas last year it was either Pritchard was getting a ton of minutes or Nesmith was getting a ton of minutes. They weren't at the same time, or both of them could be barely getting minutes. We really don't know how this rotation is going to work out. I was thinking that during the show. Brad can request all he wants, but at the same time, Emi's the coach, and he's going to make those types of decisions. Brad's just going to hand Emi the players and say, okay, here, you figure out rotations with this. I don't care if Edwards plays 48 minutes a game or 0 minutes a game. You figure it out.
For sure.
I think that's why Summer League is so important this year for the Celtics, because you need to determine what you're going to do, like how you're going to use Nesmith and Pritchard and Langford in the game. Like, are you going to have times where Pritchard's not going to play because it doesn't help with the matchup? And although we really don't have much options outside of that, and if let's say we keep Chris Dunn and we don't end up dumping him, we could have him coming off the bench. Josh Richardson, he could come off the bench. So I think it just depends on what these guys do in Summer League and what these guys show for Emi to actually use them when it comes to the games.
You made a good point there, because honestly, I know this isn't too Summer League related, but it is at the same time. I think Chris Dunn is going to find himself playing like real minutes on this team. If you look at his years past Atlanta, on his years in Chicago, he was averaging 12 points a game on, which is nothing crazy, mind you, but 12 points a game is a solid contributor. So I think that plays back to these younger guys who are like, hold on, the rotation is kind of a little bit deeper than last year, in my opinion, with the addition of Dunn and Richardson, because those guys are always going to give you something, right? We talked about this on the pregame show. Boston now has guys that offense doesn't control their game. If Walker and Fournier, if their shots weren't falling, they weren't contributing anything. They weren't. But with guys like Richardson, Horford, and Dunn, every time they're on the court, they're going to give you something, whether it's a defense, whether it's rebounding, whether it's, whatever it may be. So these young guys now, they can't settle. They can't settle for these inconsistent games, and it starts in the summer league
And
this year.
that's funny you say that, because that's exactly what we saw from Aaron Nesmith tonight, right?
Yeah.
He sucked on offense. SUCK. He sucked. But on defense, he was there, right? He's one of those guys where if he's not making it, he's going to go back and play defense. And if he's not having the best defensive game, at least he can go down the other side and produce you some points.
And,
right?
and I think Nesmith has proven that, though, in the NBA.
Yeah.
Someone I want to see do that is Pritchard, because Langford and Nesmith have always, number 11, Nesmith and Langford have always given you solid defense, have always hustled. I feel like Pritchard, if his shot's not falling, he kind of settles, right?
Yeah.
He kind of moves off ball. He kind of hides himself in the offense, when I think that is not what he needs to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hard for Pritchard, though, too, because he is on the smaller side when it comes to being a defender. Now, he is a good defender when he's on and when he's making shots. He just can't like let up on that. He needs to do like what Nesmith was doing today, where he couldn't hit a shot to save his life today, but he was still playing really good defense. And I feel like Pritchard can develop that. I feel like he's a hard worker. You know, you've seen how hard he works. So I think we just have to see what Ime thinks of them. I guess that's pretty much the only thing that we can really go off of at this point.
You know what I noticed out of Nesmith today? Like how agile he is at the rim for a guard forward position. Like not only like nuts. He hustles in to get a rebound or a steal, but like you see a very fast-paced shot at the rim by a guard/forward. It's going to brick off the backboard. We see it all the time. Look at Grant Williams. He gets, very nervous and throws it up. And oh, God, not even towards the hoop. But the putback shots Aaron Nesmith puts up, he put up a couple today. Actually, there was one sequence where this is going to end up on Shaqtin' a Fool Summer League edition. I think it was Carson Edwards went up for a layup. He missed. Tip back by Pritchard missed, and then Nesmith had to come in. Do you remember that? That was in like the third quarter.
I saw that. That
was. I was nervous. I was like, "Oh God, this is how the season."
I was watching that. I'm like, "Hit the shot! It's a wide open layup. Just get it in."
Well, like we said, Boston Celtics did defeat the Atlanta Hawks 85-83. Their next game upcoming is Tuesday, August 10th, against Denver at 7 p.m. Now we'll cover that pregame. But what do you want to see a positive carry over into that game, and what do you want to see from a negative standpoint be fixed into that game?
I want to see them.
Go ahead. No, you go.
I want to see them continue the same energy that they were doing today in the fourth quarter. I want that to carry over into the next game to give them more momentum. But at the same time, the defense is also the thing that we need to, look out for a little bit and start hitting more wide open shots. I don't know how many times there were wide open shots in the corner and they just bricked it for no reason. So I feel like hitting wide open shots is the thing they need to improve on, carry over the energy from the defense in this game.
Yeah, I agree. Carry over the energy. Something negative that I want them to carry over and fix it and turn it into a positive. Don't settle. Don't settle for shots. I bet you the nerves are going, first game of the season tonight, you get going, you figure out if you're hot or cold. That's all good, but don't settle for the shots. Move the ball around, get towards the basket. I really want to see the Celtics get more aggressive tonight. Yam, who's known as a shooter and a playmaker, was doing a lot of driving to the basket tonight. And you know who I want to see that out of? I want to see that out of Romeo Langford, Aaron Nesmith. Aaron Nesmith, who usually is very, very aggressive, settled for 8 3-pointers tonight. I know that is his game, but I want to see more from that. I want to see the Celtics attack and push the pace. I thought their defense was pretty good. I hope their defense carries over, letting up 83 points to the Atlanta Hawks. I know, again, it is Summer League, but Celtics, you got to remember, Celtics started out down 10-0. We thought this was going to be, carries over from last season, but luckily the Celtics were able to defend really well. And like you said, they get the steal at the end of the game, Ian, to really seal the deal.
Yeah, I want to see the Boston Celtics just come out with some energy. We're finally playing basketball. We're finally back out on the court. It's really exciting. I believe Emi will be joining them next game. If not next game, then against Orlando on the 12th. But he should be there next game. So that's something, to tune into and to watch. See how his scheme comes out. Where we're going to be attacking. So like I said, the Boston Celtics have defeated the Atlanta Hawks 85-83 in their first summer league game victory. The next game is Tuesday the 10th against Denver at 7 p.m. on NBC Sports Boston or on ESPNU. I'm Rob. That's Ian. That's Justin. And go